right now on Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks.
The AI infrastructure that we're developing is a train out of control. No one has control over this, in my opinion. Like, in other words, you've got people in the computing field and the AI field who want to stop the train. Back 20 years ago, it was a fellow named Bill Joy out of Sun Microsystems who said, stop this train. Today, it's people like Elon Musk, who is very, very concerned about, and I think Stephen Hawking might also fit in this, who are looking at the dangers of runaway artificial intelligence and saying, we may have a real problem here. But the thing is, I don't think anyone sees a way to stop this. All right, it's not simply a bunch of scientists agreeing for the greater good of mankind, we need not to do this. That's never going to happen, because there's military applications, there's economic, financial applications, there's profit involved in all of this, and it will never stop. So this is happening. Now, within the, if I'm understanding what you're asking here, within the intelligence community, or the classified research, maybe that might be a better way to put it.
Okay.
I think we will assume that there's great, deep, sophisticated research going on within the classified world on artificial intelligence. Everyone pretty much agrees to this. No one outside of those communities knows how far they've gone. And we're combining AI with a lot of other questions, like quantum computing. Has the classified world achieved full-blown quantum computing? Some people think they have. Others think, no, they haven't. I have no idea. And you could ask the same question about a number of other similar kinds of technologies and sciences that we're working on. Whether it's this thing that I recently learned about called molecular computing. I met this young, brilliant guy on a plane who worked on this, and it strikes me as actually at least as important as quantum
molecular
computing. Correct. Molecular computing. I need to learn a lot more about this, but it seems profoundly transformative from my limited take on it. So there's all of these different sciences being worked on in the open world and in the classified world. AI is one aspect of that. And the one question we could ask is, how far have these guys gone?
Right.
How far has it gone into them creating a completely different, if they have a different scientific type of infrastructure than what we have? Many, many times I've talked about a conversation I had with a scientist in the classified world. He was a scientist, civilian scientist with NSA in 1965.
Wow.
So this was, the NSA wasn't outed as an institution until officially a book in 1964. It's called The Invisible Government. And in this book they had a chapter on the National Security Agency. So it had just been outed. This scientist worked for them at around that time, and he said to me they had a computer that ran at a clock speed of 650 megahertz. I've said this many times. Now 650 megahertz today is nothing.
Nothing, right.
But the computer market didn't reach that clock speed until the year 2000. So if you have a computer in 1965 running at that speed, that's 35 years ahead of the rest of the world. Not too shabby for an organization that wasn't even supposed to exist.
Right.
So we, and that's only one. There's a lot of other examples, I think, that other researchers can point out of the classified world being quite advanced. And others, maybe less so. I think, a number of years ago, I coined a phrase, breakaway civilization, and it's gotten some legs, and other people like to talk about this. And I still will feel, after all these years, it's a totally valid hypothesis. But I will say this about it. Just because the classified world probably has significant breakthroughs in certain areas of our science and technology that would probably lead to other discoveries and so on that we're not permitted to see, does not mean that they necessarily have achieved magical breakthroughs in all sciences.
Sure.
So there may be limitations that they have, and in fact, I'm assuming that there are. I'm just saying that because I thought I'd have the opportunity to say it here on camera.
No, it all kind of fits together. I want to quote somebody else. This article, by the way, I would encourage everyone to go look it up. I had to do a little bit of digging. You told me to find it on
2002. It's a long time ago.
But it's still there in the
It's on my website.
blogosphere. Well, it's actually on the Unknown Country website, so I think it's kind of
Whitley
matriculated throughout. But it's actually quite good. I mean, I think we really get to see some of, you've laid the groundwork for what would be the future Richard Dolan and the subjects that you've dug into so deeply. But in that article, you also quote a gentleman named Ivan Sanderson.
Oh, yes, indeed.
This prolific writer on UFOs back in the 60s. And this is, again, where he made a statement, I don't know, where he said the actual occupants of the alien craft were in fact artificial. Again, getting back to this, drawing a nexus between, if we're talking about an intelligent species or species, plural, that may in fact be synthetic, but far surpassing obviously our the way we live right now. Might they have a hand in helping those that are trying to promote the singularity and promote AI? Might they? That's where I'm going.
This is where you're going.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
One point about Sanderson that people should know. First of all, he was a superb writer. Really one of the best writers that the UFO and related alternative fields have ever had. He's just beautiful writing. And what he did in the book where I was quoting him, he wrote a book on underwater UFOs in 1970 called Uninvited Visitors, Invisible Residents. But in this earlier book from 1967 called Uninvited Guests, I think, or Uninvited Visitors. And in that book, he doesn't really say what he thinks UFOs are. He says, what might they be?
What might they be, right.
And he lays out a really intelligent series of possibilities. Could they be organic or inorganic? If inorganic, could they be, could they be mechanical, or could they be natural? And he breaks all of these, and if they're organic, could they be natural or artificial? And if artificial, could they be this or that? So he has this whole tree of possibilities, and it's very worthwhile. If anyone can find it, I think it may be available and out there. It may be out of print, but it's a great book.
Right.
In terms of what you're asking, could these other beings be guiding our AI technologies? This is like a variation of the larger question: are other beings guiding us in general? In general,
right.
And I don't know any better than anyone else.
Right. Well, again, I don't think the goal, Richard, is to come to a definitive conclusion, but to explore again the possibilities.
Well, let's think of it this way. Look, if they have been here, let's say they've been here a long time. Many of us think that they have been here a long time. I think that I believe that that's the case. So I tend to believe that A, we're not alone. I tend to believe that there's another intelligence or multiple intelligences that find us interesting. And why wouldn't they? We are interesting. Earth is fascinating.
Yeah.
Earth is awesome. So if they've been here a long time, they're watching us. And if they've been here a long time, have they managed us? Have they manipulated us?
Have they created us? I mean, let's take it, and again,
are we property?
I'm not asking a rhetorical question here. I want to try to just explore the possibilities. Interesting that you should say they find us interesting. You know, this has been a big subject of debate in terms of if abductions are actually taking place, what would be the motivation to do this? Are they simply interested in us, or are they interested perhaps in their own experiment? Are they interested in mixing human and non-human DNA? I want to touch on the hybridization program, if there is such a thing.
Okay.
A lot of evidence leading to the fact that there may be. So again, the questions are many. Let me go back. I'm glad you brought up Ray Kurzweil. I want to make sure I pronounce his name because I think a lot of people say Kurzweil. It's Kurzweil, I believe. Obviously there's a cornucopia of information about him and his postulate of this AI and frankly transhumanism. We want to talk about that too.
He's a real optimist about transhumanism. In a way that I've never been able to get.
Right. I
don't get the optimism.
There may be a little bit of a, I'm going to hold off on that. Let me give you this quote. Because I want to really talk about, this is where it gets kind of deep for me. If we're moving in this direction, and it seems inevitable that we are moving more toward an advanced technological civilization to whatever degree it's going to be a part of us, is it for the good of humanity, or for something else. Let me give you a quote that he said, I think recently. He says, quote, things are going to move. This is in reference to AI.
Kurzweil, yeah.
Things are going to move at a pace beyond what we can now comprehend. People may not even notice it, because in its wake it will leave a very good facsimile of the real world. And this is where I kind of had a little bit of an aha moment where I said, people may not even notice it. When you think about all of the things that are going on in this world right now, covert operations, things that may not be in our best interest, I think the one thing that perhaps these groups, these factions are banking on is the fact that people won't notice it.
Look,
so I have to say I had to raise an eyebrow when I read that. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
This is the story of humanity. 500 years ago, Niccolò Machiavelli wrote in a great book called The Discourses on Livy, I'll paraphrase. He said, look, if you really want to have an effective revolution, make sure you retain a semblance of the old forms, because that's all people ever notice. You're going to have totally profound changes going on deep below the surface. People don't care. As long as they see the same structure, that's all they're going to know about. And nothing has changed in that regard. We're this exact same way that we were 500 years ago. And unfortunately, I would say, it's pretty easy to fool people. You mentioned covert ops. That goes on all the time. And we have, don't get me started on the media. So we have
Let's get started on the media.
We have a corporate media complex that does nothing other than lie. That's all they do. They don't sometimes tell the truth. I think they never really tell the truth unless it's by accident, not by intention.
Right.
So that's our world. And so when Kurzweil's talking about this transformation happening without us noticing, I remember that quotation as well. And as I recall, he should be here saying this, not me, but that I think he was saying the structures of our visual reality might not be radically different, but the transformation of the technology beneath it would be very different. My feeling is, I have a feeling it's going to look and feel very different. In many ways, our society is very radically different. And I have a feeling...
For those that are paying attention.
We didn't really have a web to speak of in the early 90s, and we didn't have social media. There's no YouTube. In other words, all the ways that we're communicating, like you and I couldn't really be doing this interview realistically 20 plus years ago and putting it out on the web. So a lot is different. And I have a feeling that 20 years from now, a lot more will be very different.
Sure.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to watch what's next, plus more to explore. And don't forget to subscribe to Higher Journeys.